Episode 3 of Season 11 of Futurama has just been released, and it's safe to say that this one, like the first episode of the season, was a social commentary on society today, and the implementation of cryptocurrency into the world. With the gang going out to Crypto Country, and more specifically Doge City, with the intention of finding thallium to mine into Bitcoin, let's recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from this episode. So let's get into it. Here is Futurama Season 11 Episode 3 Review and Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. If you enjoy this video, then feel free to hit subscribe. Thanks. The meaning of the episode. This episode was very much like the first episode in this new season. It was self-aware and was making a statement and providing a piece of commentary. With the professor entering the kitchen during the earliest moments of the episode and stating that he had lost a load of money because he invested his money in Bitcoin and it crashed straight down to the ground. Within a matter of seconds, there was a new segment that was stating how Bitcoin had a meteoric rise within that short time period. This immediately showed us the hostility of the crypto market and the fact that as fast as one can invest all of their life savings, they can lose them, but then also make even more money on top of that. So it was being self-aware of the crypto market in today's world. Whilst it was mainly focused on Bitcoin, there were references to other coins on the market that are not as reliable, and even some that had completely flopped, but we'll get to that. This was where the main plot of the episode came from. The very fact that there was a place called Crypto Country where thallium could be mined and sold to the crypto miners and converted into Bitcoin, thus allowing people to become extremely rich. The professor wanted and more so needed this so that he'd be able to pay the robot mafia, who were on his tail and in demand of the money that he owed them. As they went to the Crypto Country, we saw that the place that they went to was called Doge City. This is a reference to Dogecoin, a currency that had extreme heights and peaked in 2021, but now in the real world it's at a catastrophic low and is only worth a fraction of what it was when it peaked, causing a lot of people to lose a lot of money in the process. Again, painting crypto in a light that shows that it can cause harm. When they all arrived in Crypto Country, we saw that it was pretty much like the Wild West, and all the residents that were living there had to essentially function like it was something out of 1883. It was the Wild West, and this was because all of the electricity in the town went to the computers so that they'd be able to mine as much Bitcoin as possible. So everybody in the town suffered because of that. But it showed that they didn't care, because as long as they had the opportunity to get Bitcoin, that was all that mattered. Within this episode, we essentially saw all of the groups split up and have their own kind of side quest. We saw Leela working at the saloon, Zoidberg taking over the medical practice in the area and becoming the resident doctor, Fry being author and conman, the Borax kid's assistant, Hermes was trying to build a relationship with Dwight, and the professor and Bender were looking to find thallium with the intention of getting Bitcoin. However, with it being the Wild West, there was a bandit there called Roberto, who was out to try and make as much money as he could possibly make by stealing. This reached its climax when after Amy found a large rock of thallium that would have solved all of the debt that the professor had, Roberto took it and robbed it during the night whilst Bender was guarding it. Whilst we thought that Bender would be in trouble due to Roberto, it turned out that it wasn't the case at all. The woman who owned the saloon turned out to be the main villain of the entire episode, and was essentially kidnapping robots in the city and using their heads to mine Bitcoin, mentioning how computers were expensive to get to do that, but using robot heads was easy and a cheap way of doing it. She was known to have a split personality, and this was something that was ever present in this scene too. I feel as though she had a divisive split mind because she's somebody that's heavily invested in Bitcoin and crypto, and that's most probably a result of that, because the price fluctuates so much, so does her mood. So it had now just become a part of her personality and was a key part of who she actually was, causing her moods to peak and then drop back down. With the group escaping, being locked inside of the vault where she kept all of the robot heads. In true Wild West fashion, there was an old-fashioned face-off where we saw that everybody was facing off against the individual that had wronged them. Fry against the Borax kid due to realizing that he'd been idolizing him for the wrong reasons. He claimed to be an author, but he wasn't. He was a plagiarist of his novels, which also tied into the fact that he was a cheat. We had Bender against the saloon owner for her locking him in there, and also the pianist robot against the cackler, which resulted in the cackler and the pianist robot being killed. But the other two face-offs finished when their ammo ran out and they squashed their beef when it was done. It ultimately resulted in the Professor getting his rock of thallium back as it was rightfully his, and him ultimately cashing it in for Bitcoin. However, with the robot mafia turning up and getting invited to the back room by the saloon owner, we saw that they fell victim to her trap and ultimately ended up as these heads that were just there being forced to mine for Bitcoin. So it wasn't a good or happy ending for them, but I suppose the Professor would have had a ton of money. This episode was definitely a commentary on the crypto culture and the hostile, divisive and damaging nature that it can have on individuals if they don't know what they're letting themselves in for. When Futurama was made in the past, crypto wasn't really a mainstream thing, so we've never really seen the show tackle the alternative currency. So it was definitely interesting to see them do it, and how they decided to showcase it. Gold was worthless in that town, which was just utterly mind-boggling. It showed the value that crypto can have. Overall review. I thought this episode was a good one. It wasn't as heartfelt and warming as the second episode in the season, which focused on Amy and Kif becoming parents. But I thought this one had a similar tone to the first episode, where it was making a statement and providing an opinion on something that happens in our own society. A moment that definitely stood out for me that I thought was funny was when Bender was sitting on his mule and was singing the song. When the mule started singing along, I was in pieces. Plus his reaction when he took it into Zoidberg to get healed after being wounded. The Wild West setting was an interesting decision to make, but I think it worked extremely well, as it allowed it to be very stripped back and it relied heavily on the characters, the conversation, and the story that was unfolding in front of our very eyes. Something which was refreshing to see. The references to Dogecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin were also interesting too. I get the impression that it's a negative take on the alternative currencies, as I don't feel as though it was framed in a positive light, especially with there being a joke on how gold was worthless, but it wasn't really a negative light either. It was just having the mick taken out of it, so that's why I feel as though it was just getting rinsed a little bit. I thought it was a good continuation on from the first two episodes, and I think it's shaping up to be a pretty good season so far. Plus, with there being a trailer for the final season of Disenchantment also being released, it very much seems as though Groening is on top right now. With the next episode being titled Parasites Regained and the synopsis being, after Nibbler falls ill, the crew shrinks down for a dangerous mission in a desert world contained within his litter box. It sounds like it's going to be giving the sci-fi adventure experience that we've come to expect and enjoy within this show. So it seems as though there may be a lot at stake in the next episode. Bring it on. So, there you have it, Futurama Season 11 Episode 3 Review and Ending Explained. What did you think of this episode? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.